covering this topic today is resolving ransomware. And a couple of key takeaways you'll see there on the slide. We're going to talk a little bit about phishing attacks. We all know phishing attacks are probably the most popular way to start a ransomware attack, to dispense malware. We'll talk just briefly a little bit about that. Talking about data backups, because we need to really have a pattern in our daily activity to back up our data. Now, that's not really preventing ransomware attacks. It's really so if we have a backup, it's something we can resort to. So we have some hope then, so we don't have to fall victim to the cyber criminals and pay them that ransom. So backups of data are just really important from running a business and just protecting your intellectual property overall. So very, very important there. And I'll talk just briefly about how security is achieved in layers, and I'll try to draw some corollaries there so we could all relate to that, and that will build a stronger cybersecurity posture for all of us. And the importance of things such as multi-factor, two-factor authentication. Many of us talk about it, still not enough people are using it. It's there, it's free, it's simple to use, and it's much, much more secure. So we're going to talk about that a bit. And again, being our background expertise, Berkeley Varitronics is with wireless. I'd be remiss to not mention and talk about Wi-Fi networks, free Wi-Fi, open hotspots. A lot of people gravitate toward those, especially as we're getting out of this pandemic, traveling again, going to trade shows and events, staying at hotels on vacation. We're going to talk about some of the dangers there and some proactive things that we could do to stay safe and still have access there to Wi-Fi. And of course, I'll touch on VPNs also. So all of these, again, are centric around resolving ransomware. Before diving in, just to give us a couple key statistics, it kind of sets the stage. I always like to do this, so it kind of helps us to see how bad is ransomware, how bad has it gotten, to put it in perspective there. So first of all, there's over 4,000 ransomware attacks reported each and every day right here in the United States. That is a lot of them. That's just the ones that are reported. A ransomware attack will actually occur every 11 seconds in the year 2021, which we're in right now, as reported by Cybercrime magazine. And it's interesting, the average downtime when your company gets hit with a ransomware attack takes about 21 days till you can actually recover from it. So you can see when it's 3 weeks of downtime in any company, it could be a small business or enterprise, doesn't matter. That can really affect your bottom line. So we really want to do all we can to stay safe and be aware of what ransomware attacks are and how to prevent them, because that downtime could be crippling to us. What's really starting to take off now is ransomware as a service, where cyber criminals will actually have all the tools to educate other criminals and really do it as a service. They'll help them along. They'll have a 1-800 number. They'll have chats. They'll assist them. They'll provide them different strains of malware, help them help their victims go get Bitcoin so they could pay the ransom. What to do if the Bitcoin ransom is not paid. They can help you learn about double extortion. I'll talk briefly about that as well in this presentation. So lots of things are evolving in this world of ransomware, and it's important that we realize that we stay ahead of that curve if at all possible. Why is ransomware so successful? Why is this entire symposium here, this entire event talking about ransomware? Because the payout has gotten so much bigger. If we look at a contrast, just the average ransomware fee, if we go back to 2018, the average company paid $5,000 in ransom to get their data back, to get the decryption key, to unlock their files and to go back to business as normal. $5,000. Move fast forward to just to recently, and the average payout is now over $200,000, and that's reported by the National Security Institute. So if we think about that, look at the dramatic increase, how much more cyber criminals are able to monetize this. That's why ransomware is such a hot topic and such a problem for so many businesses. We need to keep that in mind. Now, I mentioned to you about phishing attacks. Let's spend just a brief minute to cover that, because that's really the heart of a lot of these ransomware attacks. Still, there's lots of other different means, and I'll cover a couple of these other methods. But really, it's important for us to have a good cyber training and awareness so we can spot a phishing attack. What is a phishing email that lures us in to click on it, an unsuspecting user? Well, it's important to realize that oftentimes we can spot it a couple different ways. As mentioned there, you can see in the slide there, a message sent from a public email. It could be from a Hotmail, a Yahoo, a gmail.com, one of those. They're more prevalent to have phishing attacks in there. Again, why? Because the email is free, a little bit harder to detect because there's so much volume of email going back and forth. So that they can use that effectively to launch a lot of these phishing attacks. And you'll see common things. And a lot of these things, I think, have evolved over time. They're not as much of a tell anymore, but it used to be the domain is spelled a little bit off. If you looked at the grammar, the sentence structure, the actual spelling of words in an actual email, that often was a tell that this is a phishing attack. A lot of that's changed, so we can't hang our hat on that anymore because emails are not as suspicious looking as they are. I probably get about 10 to 20 phishing emails a day on average that look very convincing, tied to our business. Here's an invoice. Here's a purchase order. Here's a document that needs to be signed and returned right away. Here's the credit card information. In all of these, a lot of the terminology looks very familiar. It's addressed to myself. It's to my main email address. So these things look very convincing, but we still got to pause and be careful. One of the most common things that is effective is when an email has a sense of urgency. They want you to click on that email, to react now. And oftentimes we hear that in sales related things, but when you're trying to dupe somebody, say it's a scam and they're trying to, claim your IRS tax refund, you must click here and report immediately. That instantly distracts us. Our mind is now thinking of something else instead of what's right in front of us. And then next thing you know, we accidentally go too far. We click on that email attachment. Again, it's a strain of malware that's going to be ransomware downloaded to our machine. So why do I always bring up phishing attacks? Because again, it is the most popular thing to dispense ransomware. So I put a little tip down there. Don't be too quick to click. It's obvious. It's common sense. Yet, out of all the millions and millions of email spam that's sent each and every day, do you know there are over 80,000 people that do click on that attachment and dispense ransomware, a malware with a strain of ransomware? And think about that, over 80,000 people each and every day. That's why it's working so effectively. And now there's other variations of it as well. When we think about it, there's phishing that we're very familiar with. There's also what's called vishing. That's really voice phishing. It's a type of phishing attack that involves using a phone to trick somebody into divulging information, handing over sensitive information, socially engineering them to pull out information. Smishing, and again, that's usually fraudulent SMS messages to, again, fool you, hoping that you'll click on something. And I get them on my phone often, get a text, you look, oh, who's this from? Oh, stop, right? That's very effective. They're starting to use that. And whaling is another type of attack that's becoming more prevalent. And that's really focused on a more lucrative target. So if they're going to target an individual for hopefully a bigger payday, they're going to be doing a whaling type of attack. And that might be an executive, C-level or something like that. And often tied into wire transfer fraud and things of that nature. So we just need to realize that. Why do I spend so much time on phishing email? Because this is this is the main means that they're using. In fact, 96% of phishing attacks arrive by email. So again, there's these other types of attacks, but not as prevalent as email attacks. And that's what we need to realize, just so we can actually always stay safe. Mentioned in the beginning about backups. Regular backups of data is essential. We need to do that if we're running a business, even personally at home, backing up our data because we have sensitive information. All of us store sensitive information on our computer, whether we realize it or not. So having a good backup plan is essential. I talk about this in one of the chapters in my books, even just like we regularly brush our teeth in the morning and at night, it's a habit. Or maybe you wash your car once a week, it's a habit. The same habit we need to form about backing up our data on our computer or computer network system at the office. Very, very important. Especially because a lot of the things when ransomware is changing. Many people have incorrectly stated that the most important thing to prevent a ransomware attack is to back up your data. Not really a true statement. It's being proactive. It is important, but it doesn't prevent a ransomware attack. It does allow you to revert to something if you are a victim of a ransomware attack. So I think it's just because you're backing up your data as you should be, doesn't mean you're not going to be prone to falling into a ransomware attack. So just keep that in mind, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. We don't want you to get confused and think, well, I'm backing up my data, I must be safe. Not the case at all. And they encourage you, depending upon the level of data, how sensitive it is, to have multiple copies. That's really important. We don't want to just make one copy and that's it. I like to keep a copy and physically remove it from the facility and keep it in a fire safe at home. So anything that happens in my company, if a fire happens, if we're victims of ransomware attack, whatever it is, I have data regularly backed up that I could resort to, wipe the system clean. That's important. The other thing it's nice to do is, and this becomes, if you have a lot of sensitive data, your enterprise level, think you really have to have a good backup plan in place. You might want to do an immutable backup. And what that really is so it doesn't allow you to alter the backup. No one can come in there and change it. No one can delete anything. It's like a permanent backup that you could resort to. And that could be important as well. So just different things to think about. The other thing is I talked before about double extortion. And that's what's starting to occur more and more in many of these cases. If we look at what's happened even recently, some of the larger cases where they resulted in millions of dollars in ransom being paid out, JBS, the meatpacking plant, Colonial Pipeline, and others. Oftentimes, when the cyber criminals get into the network, what they do is first, they're going to take and gather all the data they can, sensitive data. They're going to exfiltrate that data and hold on to it. Then they're going to encrypt the data on the computer network, right? Why? Because if you don't pay that ransom, they got you with double extortion. They could say, okay, fine. I'm going to take all your sensitive data and I'm going to put it out there on the dark web for anyone to see. And that could be intellectual property. It could be credit cards, social security numbers, employment information, sensitive data that you don't want to put out there. So again, we have to be careful. It's kind of a 1-2 punch now. It's not just worried about pay the ransom or not pay the ransom, because whether you pay it or not, there could be that double extortion. And now there's even cases of triple, quadruple extortion, where they're holding multiple things and releasing it multiple different ways to get as much money as they can in return on their theft. So it's important for us. But the bottom line for all of us from this slide is make sure you have a regular data backup plan in place. That way you have something you can do if you are victimized, or I should say when you are victimized with ransomware, but very important there. It also is good in line with that. And I recommend this typically, depends on the size of the company, the information, is that also consider getting a vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. This is where you hire a third party that's not too close to your company, doesn't know your computer network, they're not part of the IT staff, but an independent third party that can come in and identify the vulnerabilities in your company. That's important because cyber criminals are always looking just for that little back door, that little way that they can get in there so they can get onto your network, spread that malware, work laterally, and cause all kinds of havoc. But if you have a pen test, a vulnerability assessment, it starts to raise up where the weaknesses are within your organization. Why? So you could shore these points up and you could be more secure. So that's important. I recommend you have that at least once a year. When we had that done here at our company, it actually revealed things that we didn't even think about. And that's the key, because somebody independent is observing this, looking, and they're trying to exploit the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities in your company. Very, very important that you consider that to protect your company and your organization from cyber threats. I talked before about security is achieved in layers. Whether you live in a home, whether you live in an apartment, we want to think about that. The stronger cybersecurity posture that we have, the less chance we're going to be targeted and victimized by ransomware, less chance that they're going to get through. So that means we got to do the basic things. So if we think about, just to relate, if you have a home or an apartment, you don't just have your door locked and that's it. No, you probably have a deadbolt, an alarm system, maybe it's a Ring doorbell, all these different layers to prevent physical thief from breaking into your home. Hopefully he looks and starts to see all these things. He moves down the block or to another neighborhood to rob a house and not your home. Physical things And layers in security deter thieves. It's just a common fact. Same thing is true with cybersecurity. So what are some of these basic layers that we need to keep in mind? Well, cyber criminals are great at gathering information. I always liken it to a puzzle. They take little pieces and put it together. Social security number here, date of birth here, mother's maiden name here, right? All these little pieces they put together if they're going to perform identity theft, if they're going to target us, even for ransomware, wire transfer fraud, whatever it is. So the more information they have about us and our organization, the more successful they'll be in their criminal empire. So again, using these different things, keeping it, mixing it up and having these added layers make it harder for them to achieve it. Start with the basics, shredding. People always talk about it, shredding documents. Everyone I talk to says, oh yeah, I shred documents, of course. Most people say that they don't do it because I find paper all the time when I visit companies, credit card information, personnel files, social security numbers. Where does that end up? In the dumpster, in the garbage can, in a landfill, so prying eyes can see it. So make sure you get a good shredder, good quality, micro cross-cut shredder. It'll obliterate a piece of paper, a credit card, a CD, whatever, into more than 2,000 pieces. Micro confetti, you can't put it back together. Why do I say that? Because basic shredders that you can get at Staples or Amazon or anything else that costs $20, they just shred the paper like this, long lines of it. You could lay that paper out, automated tools on the dark web and a smartphone, put it over, click it. It actually puts that back together. It reconnects the shredded parts of a document, and now you can read it. It's that easy to do. So use a good quality micro cross-cut shredder, 2,000 tiny pieces of confetti. It's what NSA uses and other DoD facilities to make sure that nobody can piece that back together, either physically or with automated software. That's a very basic thing. Another thing you could do is moving data around. Oftentimes, ransomware and other malware gets moved around from a USB stick. So if you take a USB stick, and you can buy these on Amazon and many other places, they're secure sticks that have AES 256-bit encryption. They've got a simple code that you can enter in there to unlock the stick. It pollinates between Mac world, if you're in the world of Mac, or a PC, without having to have drivers or any other complications. Simply remove the stick, enter the code, put it in the next thing, unlock, you're good to go. You remove the stick out, it locks it. If you drop it on the ground, you lose it, it's stolen, whatever else. After 3 tries of the wrong code that you try to put in the stick, it wipes itself, almost like Mission Impossible, where it goes up in smoke. Again, most important though, AES 256-bit encryption to keep your data protected. So if you have sensitive files, and again, it could be credit card, social security numbers, whatever that information is, keep it protected as you move it around from a USB stick. So many people, so many cyber criminals have taken USB sticks and put malware on it in hopes that somebody picks it up in the parking lot and it says, oh, payroll. They stick it in their computer. Next thing you know, you got ransomware on your computer network. So just be mindful of that and spend a little bit of money. $40, $50, you can buy a good quality USB encrypted stick and keep your data safe. Especially good if you're working remotely from home and office and back and forth and sharing files. Keeps it safe and keeps it protected. It's a good, really strong step to take. Another one, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention passwords. I hate passwords. You hate passwords. We can't remember them. However, statistically, long passwords are strong passwords. If it's hard to remember it, it's hard to compromise and hard to hack. So I recommend at least 15 character, alphanumeric, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, all mixed in there. If it looks like gibberish, it's hard to hack. If you can't remember it, think about using a good password manager. I use Dashlane. A good balance between convenience and security. All I got to remember is one long, strong password, and then I have access to my password vault, and I recover those. Again, it's encrypted, it's stored, it's safe. As long as they don't hack into the company server and compromise your master password, you should be good. And again, it's not that often that will happen. It has happened. So you got to use caution. For really sensitive passwords, personally, I apply the security in layers. Write it down in a black book, in a locked office, in a locked safe, in a locked building with cameras and alarm. Layers of security keep the passwords near and dear to me safe, so no prying eyes could ever see them. But using different techniques like that will really help. And there's lots of other things that we should be doing too to minimize ransomware attacks, when we think about security and layers, another good layer is having, if you have a computer network system, have it segmented. When you have network segmentation, it helps isolate, almost like a sandbox. So they come in, they can't spread laterally across your whole network. They can only infect part of it when the malware gets on there for ransomware, instead of affecting all of your machines. So different things that you should think about. And of course, talk to IT to make sure that it's set up properly. That helps as well. I have to talk about multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. I really like this. It adds a little bit of complexity and a little bit of time. So yes, it leans on the side of inconvenience, but when you add it from a security level, it makes it 10 times more secure. Think about all of the large breaches that we've heard about in the past. You think about Target back in 2013 and JP Morgan, the list goes on and on. Most of those cases, when we analyze them and do research on them, we find out that there was remote access into the company's computer network system. And that's how malware was placed on the system. That's how a hacker got in. In those cases, oftentimes employees did not have set up multi-factor authentication, that additional layer. And that would have prevented the breach in many cases. So it seems too simple, too good to be true, but yet that's the case, especially now coming out of this pandemic. How many workers are still working remotely from home, their home office, connecting to their company's network? Are you using multi-factor authentication? If not, do so today. And 9 out of 10 times, there's no additional cost. It's just time. It takes a little bit more time, but adds a lot more security. And typically, and I have it broken down here in these 3 basic categories here, something that you know, and this could be a PIN code, answers to security questions and to your password. Right? Something you have generally refers to maybe a physical object. It could be a security token or something like that. Something you are. That could be biometric data. Think about maybe your iris or Apple's Touch ID or things like that, or facial recognition. So there's lots of different means of implementing multi-factor authentication. The bottom line is, are you doing it? That's what's most important. So if you're not, find a way to immediately start doing that, because that'll make the biggest difference for you as far as security perspective. So I want to jump in now to talking a little bit about wireless, because this is one of the most common methods that people are using to get into computer networks. Free public Wi-Fi hotspots. Hey, we go to Starbucks, we have a cup of coffee. That is often an environment that you want to relax. You want to get on your phone, your laptop, kick back, go on the internet, read some news articles, send some email, do whatever, a little bit of banking, whatever the case may be. But keep in mind, it's very, very easy to initiate an attack through Wi-Fi to fool somebody, a fake hotspot. Typically, what happens when something's given away for free, what happens, they're selling data. Right? Data to advertisers, browsing habits, what sites you went on, what you liked, what you clicked. So they'll give you free Wi-Fi coverage in hopes that you drink more coffee, eat more food, give more business to the particular establishment, but also that they can take your data, or more importantly, your metadata, data about data that could be correlated to yourself, and use that to sell or market to other people, to sell you more things. Wi-Fi access points are often prone to man-in-the-middle attacks. So again, you think you're at Starbucks and you're going to connect on with your phone, and you see Starbucks free Wi-Fi or whatever it's called there, the SSID that's transmitted. You click on that, but guess what? It could be the guy that's sitting in his car or next door that simply has an access point that's performing a man-in-the-middle attack. So now your device is associated to his access point, and all data and traffic both ways is going through his device. And basically he can parse that out and he could look at it. And oftentimes it's not going to be encrypted. So if you're controlling your own hotspot, and what I like to do is take my own 4G, 5G phone, which is hard to hack into. It's much more complex than hacking into standard Wi-Fi. And I use my phone as a hotspot and then connect to my laptop, again, with a long password that I control. I set it up so I don't broadcast my SSID, so nobody else around me can see that I'm transmitting from my smartphone to my laptop, and I can enable encryption, WPA2, WPA3 encryption. So I'm controlling it through strong wireless, through the cellular WAN, wide area network, and I'm encrypting the traffic, and I'm not broadcasting, hey, free Wi-Fi hotspot or anyone else to see that I'm on so they could target me. So some basic things, because hackers can go on the dark web again, and for very little amount of money, they can buy packet sniffing tools, eavesdropping tools. They could use these automated systems to distribute malware through a man-in-the-middle attack. They can hijack your session and, again, dispense malware. So lots of different ways. And this malware is often ransomware. So if you're wondering how are they getting on to your device, your mobile phone, your laptop, your tablet, it's probably because you joined a free hotspot at the airport, at the local coffee shop, at the hotel, whatever the case may be. So it is really important that we keep that in mind and not use these free Wi-Fi hotspots, because you don't know what you're getting into, unfortunately. And finally, I just want to talk a little bit about a VPN, virtual private network. Now, it is important to realize VPNs can't stop ransomware, but they can make you less vulnerable to an attack. So it is an important piece, or an important layer of security that you should consider and use. A VPN hides your IP address, and it's, again, encrypting your traffic. And that's what's really important, because it makes it harder for ransomware creators to now target you. And that's something we want to consider there. So if we're using a VPN, we're encrypting our traffic, and we're keeping it safe. The cyber criminal would have to try to intercept that, decrypt it. To do all that, guess what? It's too much of a headache. They're probably going to move on to another target. Now, it's important. You can't just go randomly pick out any VPN. I recommend you look and do a little bit of research. PC Magazine puts out a great list every year, the top 10 VPNs. The important thing that I always look for is a VPN that's not selling your data. They're not collecting data about you, your viewing habits, and browser, and what you're doing, and selling that, but rather one that you pay for that promises that they're going to keep your private information private. That's what's important, because once they start sharing your IP address and everything else, it kind of defeats the purpose of using a VPN. Your data is encrypted, so you have a layer of protection there, but why should you give away anything just because they're giving you a free VPN? I'd rather pay a little bit of money each month, or a one-time cost for a year's usage, and have more security. So I encourage you to do that. And also another point, just verify the VPN uses private DNS servers. That's another point there that can keep you safe as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But I did want to also talk a little bit about, in conclusion, to pay the ransom or not pay the ransom. It was a great point that was brought up earlier. And I want you to think about that for a second. And here's my take on it. If at all possible, you can not pay the ransom, that would be preferred. In fact, that's what the FBI and law enforcement recommends typically, not to pay the ransom. There are extenuating circumstances. Imagine a case that you're in the ER and you're having emergency surgery or something. Now imagine that hospital and the ER, the computer networks, got hit with a ransomware attack, and they can't access patient data. They can't perform emergency surgery or procedures or things like that. Now it can actually affect somebody's life. So in that instance, in my opinion, it would warrant paying the ransom to get the computer networks back online so they could receive patients and give the proper care. That's important. There are other cases too. You look at Colonial Pipeline. There were millions of dollars were being asked in ransom. They were able to have somewhat of a successful case in which they paid the ransom when they got the digital ID of the wallet for the Bitcoin to be paid. They shared that immediately with law enforcement, who did an excellent job in actually tracking that down. They looked for this many Bitcoins that were chopped up into different slices, and the money got moved around and laundered in a sense, but they were actually able to recover a lot of that money, which is somewhat rare. And that, I think, is a good successful case. And what's successful about that is that They acted quickly. It's considered critical infrastructure, even though it was a private company, privatized Colonial Pipeline, but they were able to work with law enforcement. So I think sharing information is what the key is. So if you're a business owner, if you feel like you're a victim of ransomware, it's important to make that phone call to law enforcement and report it right away, because time is of the essence. You may have cybersecurity insurance. They will often be the phone call that you make, and they'll go in there and they may say, hold up, we have the decryption key already from another customer. We can unlock this encrypted data and restore your systems. You're back in normal with minimal downtime and minimal cost. Don't pay the ransom. Ultimately, you as the customer has to decide to pay the ransom or not. But if you can not pay the ransom, usually that's the best thing to do, because you're not emboldening the cyber criminals to continue in their criminal empire and growing money. So those are just my thoughts today on this war on ransomware. Again, great topic. Hopefully some of these tips, some of the things that I shared with you can just raise your awareness so you can improve your cybersecurity posture within your organization so you can stay safer, and realize that it's really everybody in the organization, from the janitor to the CEO. It's everyone's responsibility to keep cybersecurity at the forefront of your mind and keep the company safe. Happy to answer any questions if there are any there. Feel free to throw them out there, Santiago. And again, if you get a chance, please, I encourage you to visit my website there, scottschober.com. My company's website is bvsystems.com. If you have any need for any wireless security tools. And again, I have 3 different books out there covering a lot of these different topics, all available on Amazon. And if you go to my website, feel free, shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions. And it will be me. It won't be a bot or somebody else actually answering them, but love to hear your thoughts. And again, thank you so much to the Cyber Institute for having me on and sharing some of this information on this great topic on the war on ransomware.
Absolutely, Scott. Thank you very much. And well, one of our main goals, of course, is a part of the education. So, which book would you recommend for a starter, or for people that have only just got into the cybersecurity industry? Which one do you think is best, and how would you move forward from that?
Yeah, I think probably if they could probably relate to, if they're newer to technology and cybersecurity, my first book, Hacked Again, might resonate well with them, because I'm sharing my story of all my mistakes and misgivings and being the target of repeated hacks and what I learned in the process. So if maybe somebody's starting out a small business and they're saying, hey, I don't have the budget to spend on cybersecurity, I don't have the knowledge, I try to step them through a lot of the basics so they don't go down that same path that I went and make the same mistakes. If they're a more seasoned company, and maybe they got an IT staff, they're a little bit more proficient in cybersecurity, then the second book there, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business, is ideal, because I dig in a little bit deeper on some of the specific topics and cover a lot of the recent breaches. So again, you can learn from other people's mistakes. My third book, Senior Cyber, again, that's going to be targeting somebody that's a caregiver, helping your senior parents, your grandparents, so you can hopefully empower them to feel comfortable working on the internet with a computer, with a smartphone. And it explains it a lot simpler, higher level, not deep tech, defines all the terminology when I approach it and share it in a sentence. I'm going to define it for you, so you don't get lost and buried in all the technical mumbo jumbo in the world of cybersecurity. So kind of the different books are really structured to educate people at different levels.
Perfect. That's exactly. That's great. Great information, and we'll also be sharing this. We have so much information that we're going to be taking out of this summit, and this could definitely help a lot of people, which is great. How do you feel? Because of one of the things that I've been thinking, like throughout all the conversation and all the great keynotes that we had so far, is do you believe that we're gonna finally find a way to keep all these attacks at bay? Right now, the way I see it is, it comes down to supply and demand issue when it comes to an urgency, and it comes down, and it touches like so many human-based, like irrational things or subjects. You don't know what you have until you lose it. So how much are you willing to to pay well, in this case it's money, but of course that's how it's profitable to the one who's doing it, no matter the harm or the damage they're doing. So how far or how long do people that begin to see these in the news are willing to just say, well, maybe I don't need it. Maybe, as you said, there's 2 steps, verifications and the thing on the digital recognition, your finger recognition or your iris and all of these processes that, of course, are not the prices, of course, vary, but how much expensive is it to just being a victim when you have your maybe your children's life at stake on an ER room, and then you realize, and that's what like the actual worth of information is about. So yeah. I'm a bit like, I'm sort of closing, the whole event with you, and I thank you so much for that. But yeah, it's great to have a discussion.
Great point. Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that looking at all the different speakers, and if you look at the culmination of it all, we have to all realize we have data. We have things personal, near and dear to us that do have value, and that's what cyber criminals see, and that's why they're successful in holding a ransom. Just like if our child is taken from us, ask any parent, you would do everything in your power to get that child back because you love them. They're dear to you. The same thing happens in a way we can relate to this. Have you ever had your company lose internet for one day?
Yeah, or at home.
People can't even function if you don't have internet these days. It's hard to work because we're so tied to it. Cyber criminals realize that. So they're going to keep exploiting our human connection to that, as you mentioned, for as long as they can get as much money out of us. Then I think they're going to venture to more advanced ransomware attacks and more targeted attacks, targeting, if we have a pacemaker, targeting our smart cars.
Yeah,
those absolutely. That's the future of ransomware. So we need to address the basics right now, because I think it's only going to get worse, and the price for ransom is just going to keep going up.
Definitely. How far are we to being aware that family is data? Because we see the way I see it, that we see data in the way it was files, information, or maybe credit cards or bank accounts, or I don't think that we are we're close to the we're so close to the problem, and yet we can't see that a clinical file, our medical history is data, and we maybe perceive it in a different way. Of course, if you think about it, it is data, it is information, and how it is at stake, and how we, on one hand, we have the great side of information that we are informed. We need to be more informed. We are after educating people. We need to read your books. We need to read Chris's books. We need to read all the information. And Brian and Deidre, all of them have presented here today, Jeff. And if we can get closer to that, it's not as hard as being a victim or being on that position that where we're on the wrong end of information. I mean, you knew it, you had sort of the information, but you could have been more informed, and then your information is at stake, and your information is more than just data and information, as in all these what you imagine when you think of cybersecurity, TV series or as you said, it is actually one of the chapters on a TV show. It just found a small USB drive on the floor, and he just picked it up. Oh yeah, lucky day. It actually worked in fiction, but it could actually work in reality. So how far are we from that connection in which we actually understand how valuable it is? We've evolved. Yeah, sorry.
I think it's a great point you raise, and I think just to build on that, I like to step back and say, are we educated enough? Is awareness there yet? And I say no. Why do I say that? Because still more than half the people out there, we hate talking about passwords. Yet when I bring up passwords, and I ask for, when in live events, I ask for a sea of hands, who reuses the same password across multiple login sites? Guess what? More than half the people still do that. yet they know it's wrong. So not just education, but realizing what the damage is. Too many people go, well, it's too hard to remember. I have to think too much. I can't remember. It's inconvenient. We're making excuses. We need to actually start doing some of these things and implementing. And at the same time, I think vendors need to make it easier. So some of these programs are a little bit complex and take a little bit of technical understanding. And I think too many people do this. They shy away. That's for the IT department, or I don't get the technology, deer in the headlights look. And I think that's fundamentally part of our overall problem. It's not really a complex problem. It's not really a simple spend. It's because we're kind of a little bit lazy. We've gotten lazy from doing things, and we're complacent. So we need to rise above that and actually implement multi-factor authentication, create long, strong passwords, not put too much information out on social media. The basics are still not being done by the majority of people. And that cyber criminals know, and they're just going to keep hitting that low-hung fruit, stealing our personal information, compromising our identities, stealing our credit cards, you name it, because it's there for the taking. So we need to all do a better job at it. And then to add one more point is, we say that we're getting smarter, but yet what are we all doing in our homes, at our jobs, in our car? IoT, the Internet of Things. We're plugging everything and anything into the internet, which is almost like putting out a doormat welcoming somebody into our home. That can be dangerous, especially when IoT devices do not have security built in, have no means of being upgraded with security patches, and there's known vulnerabilities, yet they're producing these cameras and doorbells and smart refrigerators and ovens and smart toilets, you name it. We're bringing into our house, the Nest, the Ring, the Alexas, the voice assistants. Do you think any of that information is being recorded? It is. A lot of it is. A lot of it can be used against us. So I think it's important that in the conversation to realize we're in control of our cybersecurity. So be cautious before you bring it into your home, before you plug it into the internet, because we could be just opening that conduit up, causing more problems.
It is. Well, you touched 2 points there that I feel are very, very interesting. First of all, you said that we are lazy, and it brings me to a former sort of a past issue. It could be, well, of course, it depends on the society, but it used to be an issue just being lazy about your health. And, there's so much, there were so many papers and everything published, the silent killers and, cigarettes and the tobacco industry. And they were on one side, and of course, food and in our day-to-day activities. Like more people now, at least what I'm seeing, but you may differ, you may know people that just don't do anything, but more people now are looking after themselves. So we are more healthy, and healthcare has evolved as well. So it comes down, to this attitude, and it also, just to sort of to blend in both of the two topics that you covered there. Being lazy means we need things to get done easier and fast. So we just get the air conditioner with the Internet of Things, and we just talk to our phone to get it on before we get home, so it's not hot when we get there. And on one side, we are. It saves time, so it's good for us. So time is a very, very precious and a very valuable asset. At the same time, it leaves us sort of uncovered to what you said, which you just said. And on the other hand, you mentioned, this manufacturers. So people who are manufacturing, who are creating all these factories, they could be, or they can be, and they will be, of course, I believe they will be regulated on these sort of things. And of course, intelligence, on the other hand, on the other side of the table, will grow as well and just try to find ways. But one of the things that I've read recently is about this obsolete things or this objects, technology things that we have, gadgets that we have, that when they're obsolete for some technologies, they still can be used in a way to penetrate a security system. So I think that we can move forward or to end up sort of in a good note, and then I want to hear what you think about this. But we can move forward into a a society or as a community, as we understood the importance of health, and governments understood the importance of health, to prolong life and everything, just to make us more aware that now the silent killer is not just things that attack our health, that somebody somewhere in the world can be actually looking to make money out of what you do and out of your life and out of your family, and that didn't happen before. But now it's a whole different thing. So we are all sort of in this together, sharing information, government policies, and how we build machinery, how we build technology, new technology, and how that will keep us safe. So yeah, just to end on that, I think it's a job from everyone. It's great to be educated, and it's great to have seminars and keynotes like this one, and keynotes like yours. So thank you very much, Scott. I'll lead you to just to close this event with me. So
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I do think, just to add to your point, which is brilliant, if you can contrast cyber criminals on the dark web, they share information freely, back and forth. They train one another, share malware, share code, scripts, all kinds of things, techniques, how to steal money from good people. Unfortunately, the good guys, private and public sectors, don't share enough information. There are too many silos out there. So that needs to be changed. If we collectively, as the good guys, are better equipped at sharing information pre-breach, it could prevent a lot of these breaches. So it's starting to happen. You see the government reaching out and saying, hey, report a ransomware incident. Here's a number you can call. Here's a website you can go for tips and what you should do and how to contact law enforcement and the FBI, so on and so forth. So if we follow those things and act quickly and work and share that information, and the government does their side and they share information back to protect consumers and small businesses, it's going to make the world a safer place. But a lot more work has to happen, and we got to be more sharing and keep educating one another, like with this great summit. So thank you so much for having me.
Please, Bob. That was awesome. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. We've covered, I believe, we've reached our goal of covering how we can move forward to defeating ransomware. So thank you very much. On behalf of the Cyber Institute, thank to all our speakers today, and thanks to the audience, thanks to our sponsors, thanks to Active Cipher, thanks to Mike Quinn. And we will be organizing more of these events, and we will be sharing all the information shared today, which we believe is great. So we hope you feel the same way. In the cybersecurity month of October, I think we've done. We've tried to make our part in this whole new challenges and this whole new movement that is going on right now. Well, it's not new; it's been for ages, but we're only just beginning to see how it affects people, and we want to be there for them in any way we can. So once again, thank you, Scott. Thank you all. And well, that's it for today. We will be posting on our LinkedIn profile, and of course we're open to any questions. We've received, well, we just received the questions on the general chat about, if the people that subscribe will be receiving a link, and they are going to be receiving a link with different slots, parts of the summit, and then if they need anything else, we can definitely share with them. So thank you so much again, and yeah, have a great weekend, and have a great rest of the year.
Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.